Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Momentarily, I will be joined by Kevin Palmieri for a discussion on achieving success and overcoming obstacles. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Bruce, thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to the viewers.
I am Kevin Palmieri. I am the CSO, the founder, and the host of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast with 1,860 episodes, over 1 million listens, and listeners in 170 plus countries. And I'm just passionate about self-improvement. Self-improvement changed my life. And I think one of the best ways to figure out what success is to improve yourself along the way and then achieve success in your own personal way.
I think you said you were the CSO?
Yes, Chief Sales Officer.
Oh, okay. I hate acronyms. And
it wasn't my idea, Bruce. It wasn't my idea.
As a matter of principle, I have decided to remove all the acronyms from my brain. What is success?
Success is personal. Success is personal. I think it is an alignment of core values, core beliefs, and core aspirations. And I think one of the interesting things about success now is we're starting to see that the destination isn't success. It's the journey that is going to be required in order for you to get there. If you don't like the process, it's going to be very, very hard for you to achieve quote unquote success. Because when you do achieve it, you have to find a way to sustain it. So if I don't like podcasting, and I hope one day I'm going to get to a mythical place where I podcast so much I don't have to anymore, I'm probably not going to feel very successful. If you force me to use one word, Bruce, I'd say success is fulfillment.
It's interesting because once you gain success, once you've achieved success, that implies, and feel free to disagree, that you've arrived at your destination. You've achieved your goal. But to maintain that, you have to continue doing what you did in the first place.
Yeah, I think the dieting is a good example. What's harder, losing 10 pounds or keeping the 10 pounds off? I think it depends on the person, right? But if you hate what it takes to lose the 10 pounds, you're probably going to hate what it takes to keep the 10 pounds off. And it's just, that's what makes success so hard, I think, is we see the results, but we don't really see behind the scenes of what the day-to-day life looks like. So I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
It's interesting you say dieting because someone once asked me what the major problem was with dieting because I had lost 50 pounds. Gained back, I think, 30, but that's beside the point. I said, dieting is a process in reverse to the distance between where you live and the nearest Dairy Queen. Or words to that effect. It's already been a long day. Okay, so we know what success is, and achieving shouldn't be any mystery. Now we come to obstacles. Now that reminds me of failures, and people say there's no such thing as failure. There's all learning opportunities. There's no such thing as an obstacle. These are all challenges to be overcome. What's an obstacle?
An obstacle is something that's in the way of the direction you want to move in. And I think you can either change your perception or you can change your behavior. And yeah, there's a lot of people that say, well, everything that happened in the journey is supposed to happen and there's no such thing as failure. They're all lessons. I think it depends on how much self-belief you have. I think it depends on your relationship with failure. But an obstacle is something that is currently blocking you from where you are today to where you aspire to get to. And here's the interesting thing. Many of the obstacles we don't even know because we don't have the self-awareness to understand our blind spots yet. So not all obstacles are actually things that you can see yet. Sometimes they're just limiting beliefs or whatever it is, cognitive biases that are holding us back.
Now, I forgot to ask you a question before we got started, and I wanted to ask you beforehand because I didn't want to embarrass you.
Embarrass me.
But you just answered the question without knowing it. So
Okay.
now I'm going to ask the question. You wrote that viewers will learn, and here I'm quoting, strategies to overcome obstacles and improve self-belief.
Mm.
I thought that belief may have been a typo, but you just said self-belief. So what is self-belief?
Self-belief is your unique belief in your capability to build something in the external world. Do I actually believe that I can make this a successful podcast episode? I do now more than I did in the beginning because I have reps and I have experience and I have proof. Yeah, self-belief is I believe that I am capable of jumping on stage and giving a speech. Self-worth is I believe I'm capable of receiving the results I'm deserving of. So self-belief, I think, is external, where self-worth tends to be more internal, and they're way more connected than I ever thought originally.
But there's a little problem with self-belief, reality. And I've had many people come on this podcast, and they've all told me they've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. One told me 1 million followers, and the interview would break the internet with the number of views, and they can't even get two digits. They can't get up to 10.
Mm.
And that's pretty hard for some people to cope with because they believe one thing, the reality is another. And because their self-belief has no relation at all to reality, it hurts. And it can take them, 1 step forward, 10 steps backwards.
Yeah. Some people, Bruce, I think they have delusional self-belief. I would call that probably delusional self-belief. I don't know if, here's the interesting thing about self-belief. I don't know if anybody is actually accurate based on their competencies and their self-belief. From what I've seen, everybody is either over or under. I'm somebody who struggled a ton with self-belief. You might not see it because I do this a lot, so I'm just comfortable here, but I was way under. My business partner is convinced he can do anything, no matter what, no matter how hard it is. He is the one who can do it. He was a little bit over, and we've had our what we call drive to 5. So in fairness, yeah, some people are over, where there might be other people who are really good and they have an audience that would love to hear what they say, but they don't have the courage to reach out and say, hey, Bruce, I'd love to talk about stay-at-home parenting, because maybe they're under. So they're holding themselves back from getting results. The other side is expecting results that they're just not ready to get yet.
Not a big deal. I had a television show for, I think, a year. It was on Bronx community, what do they call it? Community television, paid for by the nonprofit that I was working for. That's why I say let's not blow this out of proportion. The important point was that the first episode, I looked like a deer caught in headlights. I was praying for death. No one wanted a heart attack more than I. And when it was over with and I went to stand up, I fell back into the chair because the blood had stopped flowing. And the executive director of the station came over to me and said, Bruce, it happens to everybody. When you get comfortable, you'll start moving and you'll realize, because I thought if I move, I'm going to, I won't be in focus anymore and cause problems for the camera operator or whatever. So I said, how did I do? And he said, besides being scared to death, you talk too much. Keep your quiet. He critiqued what I was doing, and he was right. And the first show was terrible. Then after about 6, 7 months, I decided that I was really, really good. And I didn't need the teleprompter anymore. I was wrong. I forgot the name of the company. I forgot my name. It was awful. Now, there was a very lovely woman who was a member of our senior center, 4'0", an Italian grandmother, which I assume is the same as a Jewish grandmother. And she was my biggest fan. And she would watch the show every week. Sometimes she'd watch the reruns. And we're passing each other in the hallway, as I knew was going to happen, because we always passed each other in the hallway. And I dreaded it because she wasn't going to give me any kind. She was going to give me grief. She just looked at me and said, "Whatever you took before the last show, don't do it again." It was great. I loved the criticism. I had good professors. They taught me the importance of criticism. Consider the source. It's for your own benefit. Now, when you have faced the reality that your self-belief isn't what you thought it was, or even your self-worth, how do you advise people to take criticism?
Oh, man. One thing I always suggest is you have to depersonalize it. Just because somebody doesn't like what you did does not mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a bad speaker. It doesn't mean you're a bad coach. It means that your approach was a little bit off. So I tend to say, one, let's unemotionalize this and try to jump into rationality, because that's where we're going to learn and we're going to grow. And then let's reflect on what we did, and then let's re-perfect that moving forward. So there's kind of there's the 4-step cycle. You prep, you rep, you reflect, and you perfect. When you get feedback, we can use that to perfect. And again, you're never going to be perfect. And then you take those lessons into the next rep that you have. But I think the biggest thing is probably depersonalizing. You didn't personalize it. You didn't say, well, she hates me. You said, that's pretty good feedback. And here's the other thing. Try to surround yourself with people who are going to give you feedback at the level that you can actually handle. Bruce, you come across as somebody who has very high self-belief. I don't know if there's anything I could say that would offend you. I could be wrong, but I feel like you've gotten some feedback in your day. Right?
Yeah.
In the beginning of this journey, if somebody pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Kev, that was terrible," I may not have ever done it again. I needed someone to give me the upsides before they give me the downsides. So I think who is giving you the feedback has to be weighed in as much as the feedback you're getting, because some people might get feedback that would break them, honestly. And I don't know what to do about that. That might be a fork in the road for them.
I had a boss who criticized me, as bosses are wont to do. And I said, "I will get back to you tomorrow morning." And the next morning I walked into his office and he had a strange expression on his face. And he said, "Are you going to quit?" I said, "Why would you even think that?" And he said, "Well, you said you wanted to think about what I said." I said, "Yeah, you paid me the compliment of sharing with me ways to improve. I wanted to give it proper consideration. And I agree with almost everything you said, but I have a little problem with this." And I don't remember what it was. And I said, "Yeah, okay, fine, no problem. Didn't matter." Someone and we've known each other now for about 15 minutes. I hope you will not be offended. I do not mean this to be offensive. It's just an example of how I deal with someone who criticizes me and then some idiot comes over and says, well, I guess you're really through with him because it wasn't. I would say, in your case, nah, the guy's got tattoos. His head's not on straight, you know? And because you have self-confidence, you're not offended.
Yeah.
So self-confidence, self-worth, self-belief. I was going to say three sides of the same coin, but let's say three sides of the same triangle.
Well, and when you pair all those together and you have so there's two types of mindsets. There's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is Bruce gave me feedback and that feedback is the way it is and I could never get out from underneath that feedback. That is now my reality. I'm a failure because somebody said I didn't do well. A growth mindset is exactly what you said. Thank you for pointing out the things about me that I could improve. It's a great opportunity. It's a great learning opportunity. It's a great opportunity for me to get better. But that requires a growth mindset. And I think the only way to build that is to start taking losses at the level that you can handle. The beautiful thing is most people will never give their first speech in front of 30,000 people. They're going to give their first speech in front of 0. Mm-hmm. And then maybe it's their family and the pet, and then it's the friends. That's when you make your mistakes. Mm-hmm. And when you make mistakes for long enough, when you do misspeak in front of 30,000 people, it's not as big of a delta. It's not, I've never made a mistake. I just made a mistake at the grandest scale. It's, I've made so many mistakes leading up to this. I know this isn't the end of the road, but that time in between is what people don't see. The reps in between is what people don't see.
Unless you're a great con artist, you're not going to get invited to speak to 30,000 people.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of those out there, so it's possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the one thing that I learned that shocked me was I always considered public speaking in front of a group. 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, didn't matter, a group. But there are people who are so scared of public speaking that for them, speaking in front of one person is public speaking.
Yeah.
So you can learn. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched YouTube of Johnny Carson delivering a monologue.
No.
You should.
Okay, done.
It's very funny. And especially when he bombs. And I learned how to react to bombing on the stage from watching what he did. And I would just mimic him. And that it's a great segue to get back to what you're talking about. Everybody laughs, nobody's taking anything personally. It's all fine and good. But he said something that I've heard a lot of comedians say, which is true because it happened to me. There's no place lonelier than a stage when you have told a joke and there is no response. I mean, that is just, it is an awful feeling. So that can be an obstacle that can knock you down because here you are, you were invited to speak in front of 100 people. You were doing the best you could. You said something and it flopped. How do you get over that?
You got to have a short memory. You got to have a short memory. There's a lot of high-level athletes that are really good at throwing an interception and then saying, all right, that drive is done. Let me go back after it and try again. What I have always liked to do is I like to watch the footage back to see where I actually went wrong. In the moment, you don't really know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You kind of do, but when you see yourself from the perspective of the audience, you might actually say, yeah, no, honestly, that should have bombed. I didn't tell it very well. Mm-hmm. I think you have to look at the truth to the level that you can handle it because we make up these things. Well, that audience it was a cold audience. They were stiff. They were never going to laugh. Maybe you didn't tell it the way you've told it before. Maybe the pause was off. Maybe the inflection was off. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff you can learn by watching your own content. So that's probably what I would do.
And I learned something watching my own content. When I was speaking at the public library, they offered to videotape it. And I said, sure, go ahead, why not? Let's see what it is. And this was in the olden days when they actually handed you a video. And I went home and I watched it. Now, my presentation was great. It went fine. Got a lot of business out of it. There was nothing wrong. But what I didn't realize was I'm standing at the podium. I have both hands, or a hand on either side of the podium, and I'm rocking back and forth. And it was just watching it was aggravating for me, let alone the audience. Now, the audience didn't care.
Yeah.
I got the results I wanted. I was happy. But I didn't know that. When I had the television show, the first thing I noticed was that my left lip goes up when I speak. My upper left lip goes up. So I called it doing a little bit of an Elvis Presley.
Mm.
Well, you cannot force yourself not to move your your lip in an unnatural way and still be able to speak like an intelligent human being. So there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm.
And that which you can't do anything about shouldn't be something that bothers you. That's the way it is.
Well, that's confidence, right? There's things about you can change. There are things about you that you're not going to be able to change. And I think true confidence is understanding that you might have some sort of insecurity, but if you can't do anything about it, I'm 5'5" on a good day, Bruce. Don't like it. I want to be 6'5", but that ain't gonna happen. So I have to be very honest with myself. And I think that when you're gonna get feedback from other people, you have to watch your own stuff, whatever that means, not necessarily speaking or whatever, but you have to watch your own stuff and give yourself feedback. What did you do well? What could you improve on? I think you focus there because, to your point, you didn't do anything inherently wrong. It didn't go terribly wrong, but did you do everything to the standard that you aspire to? Maybe not. And that's good. That's a good opportunity for growth, but it also means you did really well, and you can have the duality, I believe.
Now, the fact that you're 5'5", I will tell you, is totally irrelevant. Why? I was asked to hire someone as a recruiter to find a new CEO, president CEO. And the first requirement was that they could take possession of the room. And for most people, that means somebody over 6 feet tall. They walk in, and if they've got the skills, they can take possession and hold the room. When I started my own company, I went to a lot of sales seminars, all of which were pretty much a waste of time. But I mean, when they start off, are you here to learn how to sell more? No, I'm here to learn how to bake cookies. I don't like stupid questions, but anyways. And I don't know what the politically correct term is. I don't care what the politically correct term is. Anybody who knows me knows I hate PC. There was a sales seminar, and this had to have been arranged beforehand because otherwise the gentleman would have probably killed himself. All of a sudden, in runs, holding it's not holding anything. In runs a gentleman, probably 4.5 feet tall, a dwarf. He jumps on the stage. He then runs over to the podium, jumps up, grabs the microphone, takes the microphone, and starts his presentation. Everyone at first is shocked by the acrobatics and his skill. And then he starts to speak. And from that moment, he owned the room. His height didn't matter. Nobody cared. I doubt anybody remembered it because he was so good. So it's the skills that you have. Appearance isn't everything. There are people, sorry to have to tell you, probably not a shock, who can't stand tattoos. They just creep them out. They don't want to see tattoos. You were talking about, you used a sports analogy. I believe it was football. I'll use baseball. There was a batter, I don't know, some time ago, who objected to the tattoos on the pitcher's arm. They said it was distracting him, so he had to put on sleeves. That's why you see a lot of pitchers wearing sleeves. But a couple days ago, the New York Mets lost to the Los Angeles Dodgers 9-0. Yesterday, I guess it was, the Mets came back and won. And one of the announcers, wasn't for this game, it was for whatever game, said the beauty of baseball is that you have to perform the next day. You don't have time to wallow in self-pity. So how important is the time factor between your projects, assignments, presentations, whatever it should be, in helping you to maintain the proper level of self-worth, self-belief?
In an ideal world, you would have your next rep planned, scheduled, and locked in before the previous one. That way, if and when things potentially go wrong, you can't back out. And you don't live in the world of, I'm not ready to do that again. You got to get back on the stage. You got to get back on the microphone. You got to get back on the song. You got to get back in front of the audience, whatever it is, because we can psych ourselves out. And then emotion gets involved and we start to say, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Bruce, my first speech I ever gave, crushed it. Went way better than I thought. Second speech, it got so bad that I had the kids come up and start doing push-ups. That's how off the rails this went. It was very important for me after that second one to lock the next one. Because if I thought about it, I would overthink it and say, you know what? Maybe this speaking thing isn't for me. But let's look back. The first one went well. This one didn't. The next one most likely will if I figure out what went wrong here. So yeah, I think it's super important because it's very easy to emotionalize an outcome when in reality, there's no guarantee that that is going to happen again. And it's definitely going to be worse if you just don't do it ever again. You'll be the person who says, yeah, I used to be a speaker, but nobody wants to be that person. You don't want to be that person.
I went to a university in Israel, at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And I don't remember how, but I was invited to give a talk on my doctorate at the University of Tel Aviv in Hebrew. And I'm obviously not a native Hebrew speaker, but I knew the vocabulary. And I gave a speech at the University of Tel Aviv. I was brilliant. I was so above my norm, it wasn't even funny. And one of my professors was in the audience. And he came over to me very nicely, put his arm around me and said, how did you do that? That was great. You've never given a talk like that before. I go, I don't know how I did it. And they go, okay, fine. So we get back. And a couple of days later, the chairman of the department says, so-and-so wants you to give the same talk you gave at Tel Aviv. He says, you were brilliant. And I said, yeah, and I don't know that I can do it again. You can do it again. It's fine. Couldn't do it again. Couldn't do it again. Didn't work. And at one point, when I realized it just wasn't going as well, I pointed to him and said, remember, he's the one who said I was brilliant, and he said I could do it. Kevin, I've enjoyed this. We're just about out of time. I want to, bear with me one second. I want to share with our viewers your contact information. Excuse me, and ask one final question.
Please.
Is there anything that I did not ask that you wish I had asked? And if I had asked, what would you have said?
Ooh. Probably, I don't know if anybody could ever possibly ask, because how would you know? But why is giving advice so hard? And the answer I would give you is because the advice that I give is dependent on my self-belief and my self-worth and what has worked for me. If I'm somebody who has always believed in myself, Bruce, I'm going to say, when you fall down, just get back up, wipe off the dirt, and go do it again. I might say, if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I might give you that advice. And that advice might work for you if you have the same amount of self-belief that I do. That's why the finding the right people to take advice from is so very, very important, because you can really only give advice based on your understanding of the world, and if you and yourself and others. And a lot of people just haven't done that work. They just give advice based on what's worked for them, and what worked for them might not work for you. So that's what I would say.
Kevin, I thank you profusely. You have provided a great deal of food for thought. I appreciate it, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. So
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Bruce.
My pleasure. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching, and as always, please stay focused on success.